Today I'm identifying houses of worship, churches, synagogue, and mosques as essential places that provide essential services.
You are listening to President Trump ordering houses of worship be allowed to open up this weekend. He says he plans to override any governor that plans to keep them closed. He did not say what legal authority had to do that. But an encouraging update in New York this afternoon. Governor Cuomo announcing Long Island and the Mid-Hudson regions could start phase 1 of reopening starting next week. They still have a few benchmarks to meet. The number of deaths need to decline, and contact tracers must be in place in those regions. Today, Mayor de Blasio announced 13 miles of streets will open up for pedestrians only starting tomorrow. That means there will be 45 miles of open streets in New York City for social distancing. And at city beaches, the NYPD plans to amp up patrols by 30%, and 2,300 social distancing ambassadors will be making sure everyone stays 6 feet apart and staying out of the water as well. Let's go live to News 4's Andrew Siff at Coney Island with the new way the city is tracking progress as well. Andrew.
Right, Stefan. Well, at this hour, they don't really need the officers and the social media ambassadors. They've got the red flag flying, which shows there's no swimming. And if we show you on the beach here at Coney Island, there is nobody in the water. And city officials hope this entire holiday weekend it stays that way. New Yorkers who hit Coney Island today seem to have no problem with the mayor's order. No swimming.
We're not ready, so we have to take these precautions, and as a parent, you want to safeguard your kids.
City Hall today changing its way of measuring progress in the pandemic. The mayor saying it only needs 10 days below a hospitalization threshold of 200 new patients. That number currently just 76. ICU admissions still too high. The threshold is 375. There are still 451 people in the ICU.
The day-to-day changes, the small up and downs matter less. What matters more now is staying at a low level.
Meanwhile, the mayor is urging more social distancing outside, like the circles you see here at Brooklyn's Domino Park.
We want to make sure that that kind of model is used in other places where it could work.
And a new ad campaign, Take Out, Don't Hang Out, reminding people not to stay out long. It's a surreal message on a weekend that's usually one of the most crowded on streets, on trains, and at the airports. Is anybody flying anywhere?
Well, the answer is if we were talking a year ago, Andrew, we would be headed for a record weekend. But today, totally different story. 97% down in terms of passengers going through the airports.
Meanwhile, Governor Cuomo today gave the green light to Long Island and the Mid-Hudson region, including Westchester, to start staging construction, which could begin days from now.
But if the number of deaths continues to decline, they get their tracing up and online, both regions could reopen this week.
And the governor also made clear, regardless of the city's new way of measuring progress in the pandemic, it's ultimately the state's call of when this region can reopen. Live in Coney Island, Andrew Siff, News 4 New York.
Andrew, thank you very much. Now let's update some breaking news at Rockaway Beach. A 24-year-old man has died after he was pulled from the waters there. 2 other men had to be rescued. They are okay and expected to be all right. Happened near Beach 86th Street just after 3:30 this afternoon. A reminder, swimming is off limits at all New York City beaches. State beaches are now open on Long Island. They are limited to 50% capacity. You do not have to be a Long Island resident if you want to hit the sand at these beaches. But you do have to be a resident to visit several local beaches in both Nassau and Suffolk counties. Let's go to News 4's Greg Circle live at Robert Moses State Park with what officials are now expecting to see this weekend. Greg?
Well, Stefan, whether it's on the sand or out on the water, Long Islanders are obviously itching to get outdoors after 2 months of quarantine. And today, local officials say they're ready to handle whatever comes.
Today's the day.
Dave Winthrop finally began his boating season today, a month later than normal. But even on the water, he says, there's no escaping coronavirus rules.
I could fish literally 4 guys, 4 corners of the boat, and be socially distanced without masks.
New York State wants boaters like Winthrop to head out only with immediate family members and to refrain from tying up their boats with any others. Chris Richards says the jury is still out on whether everyone on the water will comply.
It's hard to say. I think it's going to be kind of a yes and no thing.
Beachgoers are facing restrictions of their own, sure to be tested this Memorial Day weekend.
On that rare occasion someone does refuse to comply, we will be calling the police department.
Islip's town supervisor says her beaches will, like most on Long Island, be open to residents only. State beaches like Robert Moses are open to everyone, but warning signs like this call for social distancing and wearing masks when that's not possible.
I'm glad they don't want us to wear masks in the water.
Catherine Colavito tried to make light of it all as she sat apart from her childhood friends as they celebrated a birthday. That's a day at the beach at the start of summer 2020.
Surreal. It almost feels dreamlike. I don't know. I just hope we wake up and it's over.
Back live now, and as you can see right now at Robert Moses State Park, Field 5, a small crowd here. And with an iffy forecast this weekend and temperatures in the water very cold, officials are not expecting huge crowds here over the next couple of days. But Suffolk police say they are expecting more boaters on the water, and they say they will step up patrols to enforce not only coronavirus rules, but also to stop things like reckless boating and drunken boating. We're live at Robert Moses State Park. Greg Sergel, News 4 New York.
Thank you so much, Greg. New Jersey is relaxing some restrictions. Governor Phil Murphy says outdoor gatherings are now limited to 25 people. That's up from 10. Indoor gatherings are still capped at 10. And all campgrounds are now open to the state. So are the beaches. And let's go live to the beach. News 4's Brian Thompson live in Belmar. There are going to be some changes to talk about here, Brian.
Yeah, and it's town by town. Some have parking restrictions, some have beach badge restrictions. You can see the social messaging sign here behind me, but that's just one indication of how towns are approaching this on a case-by-case basis. Now, with the weather that Greg was just talking about and Janet was talking about, well, at least for today, this first day of the Memorial Day weekend on the Jersey Shore, ended up, at least at this hour, being kind of a bust. At best, social distancing was spotty in the Donovan's Reef parking lot this morning in Seabright, where a limited number of badges were on sale for its private beach, and the lack of face coverings bothering Carrie Sullivan.
It does a little bit because you never know what they're bringing home.
Face coverings were few and far between on the Belmore Boardwalk as well, though there will be a strict social distancing enforcement on the beach this summer, starting with a friendship force of blue-shirted goodwill ambassadors who will only gently suggest separation. If I got aggressive with you, what are you going to do?
Back off. I do have a cell phone. If I need to call someone, I can.
That, of course, would be the police. But at Mama Luke's restaurant, the owner here only wishes he could enforce social distancing, expecting business down 50%.
Without the late night people around, that's the driver of the business down the Jersey Shore, is the taverns, the excitement.
Social distancing and safety will also be enforced out on the water. The Coast Guard working with New Jersey and New York State Police and the NYPD. Here at its Sandy Hook docks, we got a look at their version of pandemic policing.
For example, the N95 respirator that many people have heard about, as well as Tyvek suits, rubber gloves.
The cutter Shrike, the flagship of its response. The Coast Guard worried especially this weekend about boaters hitting rough water and capsizing. That's what happened to kayakers on Sandy Hook Bay earlier this week, starting to suffer from hypothermia before state police rescued them off a sandbar.
Although it could be a nice day out temperature-wise, 60, 70, 80 degrees, the water can still be cold and hypothermia can set in a lot quicker than you think.
Now, while towns can limit the number of people on their beaches, the Coast Guard, state police have no power to limit the number of people on the water. And they're worried that more and more people than usual will be on the water in the next week or two. Live in Belmar, Brian Thompson, News 4 New York.